Hello everyone and welcome back to my corner. I am the DM as always, and today we have one from Charlie Kirk. I just found this video through another YouTuber, and in hearing how Charlie responds, I almost immediately went, this is a video I should respond to. Because this is a video that I feel a lot of people need to see. So let's dive right in, shall we?
G'day, Charlie. Mate, I'm
Good day,
not
mate.
from around. G'day. I'm clearly not from around here, mate. So,
You're from a lockdown country.
I am. I'm from the most locked down city in the world, actually. And so what I've found travelling across this country is that there's a lot of Americans who are seduced by the ideas that are perpetuated in Australia. A lot of, especially young Americans. For any of you who haven't seen...
Now, I actually haven't been looking into what's happening in places like Australia. I've mostly been, when I do kind of look at things, I mostly either focus on here in the States or in places like China or the UK. I don't often think about Australia.
like what's happening in my country. It's pretty insane. And I think that there's a massive equation between Western nations that we're all the same, especially with young people, and they look, or they're sold this concept that, you know, you look to Europe for the future, look to Australia for the future. So I just wanted to know, what would you say to young Americans about American exceptionalism and where you don't want to head in terms of the future for America?
It's a phenomenal question. Let me ask you a question first. Tell us how bad it actually is in Australia. Just tell us some examples of what's happening in your country.
So I'll try not to go on a lot because, I have a lot of mates who are really struggling right now. My mum's fled Victoria, and my sister, they've left to go to Queensland. Victoria is basically where Melbourne is. It's the second largest city in Australia, and so it's basically the California of Australia, and only seriously worse because it's got really violent in terms of police cracking down on protests and stuff like that. We don't have any freedom of speech in Australia enshrined in legislation. So, yeah, so it's...
Damn. You hear that? Let's go back and listen to that again.
In Australia enshrined in on protests and stuff like that. We don't have any freedom of speech in Australia enshrined in legislation.
They don't have any freedom of speech enshrined in legislation. We do. It's one of the key differences.
So, yeah. So it's so my mum's really struggled in terms of mentally and stuff like that because it's just lockdowns.
And just to add more color to that, mandatory curfews, can't go outside a couple miles outside of your home. Those are all real things, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All because of...
Very real. It's not, yeah.
Because
what you're hearing out of Australia is very, very real.
I'm told by people this is not true, and...
Oh, nah.
You got the accent to prove
it. People being arrested... People being arrested for putting their trash cans out after curfew. Like, you can get onto YouTube and you'll have a ball on there. You'll just spend hours watching crazy stuff from Australia. So, not snakes.
America's supposed to be different.
Damn. Can you imagine that? Just think about that, right? Here in America, you going out to put your trash cans at the curb, and then you get arrested. Can you imagine? If that had ever happened here in America, you know how much of an uproar there would be? It'd be insane. It'd be insane. Not gonna happen. But could you imagine? Because that's the way we're going. That's the way we're headed.
And this is where I talk about American exceptionalism. The Anglosphere has differences, unfortunately. That Australia does not believe in natural rights the way the American project did. You just gave a great example. They do not have freedom of speech protected. Therefore, in Australia, the guys with the guns get to determine who gets to talk. In America, as we have an assault on freedom of speech, public expression, freedom of assembly, all of a sudden, we're going to start heading in that direction. So what...
And if you don't believe him, let me pull up a picture real quick. This is a letter from the mayor of Washington, D.C., Mayor Bowser. I love that name. And this was to Donald Trump. Now, this was in response to the curfew that was ending at 6 a.m. And within it, you can see it's been outlined right here. Furthermore, I continue to be concerned that unidentified federal personnel patrolling the streets of Washington, D.C. pose both safety and national security risks. The deployment of federal law enforcement personnel and equipment are inflaming demonstrators and adding to the grievances of those who, by and large, are peacefully protesting for change and for reforms to the racist and broken systems that are killing black Americans. It goes on to say our police and incident command have clear channels of communications and roles, and it is important to note that these additional unidentified units are operating outside of established chains of command. These chains of command are in place for a reason, just like things like the filibuster in the Supreme Court. This multiplicity of forces can breed dangerous confusion, such as when helicopters are used in warlike tactics to frighten and disperse peaceful protesters. You have to remember, here in America, we have the right, a God-given right, according to the Constitution, to peacefully assemble and peacefully protest. And they're using helicopters in a warlike tactic to frighten and disperse peaceful protesters. I'm just pointing out facts. I'm not saying anything, but these are facts. Adding to the confusion and my concern are the units that lack identifying insignia. When citizens are unable to clearly identify legitimate law enforcement officers, it creates unnecessary risk for both protesters and officers. In fact, we found many years ago that conflict between police and citizens is reduced when law enforcement affiliation is apparent. Thus, identifying insignia is mandatory in Washington, D.C. I'm just pointing out facts.
What is the big difference between Australia and America? It comes down to our mission statement. The mission statement of America is who's the sovereign? The people. Australia, they do not believe that. What else is the difference in America? We believe the states created the federal government. The federal government did not create the states. Australia is a centralized nation. We're one size fits all. We're going to tell you what to do. Mandatory edict, you do not question it. In America, we have liberty as a core value. We have a trinity in our country. In our country, there's a Christian Trinity, Jesus the Son, God the Father, and the Holy Spirit. There's an American Trinity. It's on every coin. You guys should look at it every time you look at a piece of currency before they all go away, which is going to happen very soon, unfortunately. Liberty, in God we trust, and e pluribus unum. It's the American Trinity. Australia believes in none of those things. I'm not accusing Australia. This is not part of their mission statement.
See it on every single one. Probably not mine. My webcam's not great, but on every coin.
Means doing what you ought to do absent government or corporate interference. In God we trust, a transcendent order of a natural rights giver. E pluribus unum, Latin phrase, it means out of many one. We are one people, and the ruling class is not better than the sovereign. And what is the ramifications of that? Australia, because they were not founded on the same ideas, you know, that kind of history class that you might not take that seriously, the history that's under attack by the critical race theorists, because Australia does not have the same documents, the same mission statement, the same preservation of rights, yeah, when they get 200 COVID cases, they can march to the streets and start to arrest 8-year-olds because they're outside of curfew. And that's not an exaggeration. It's a real thing. So when I say an American exceptionals, that means a recommitment to the American ideas that allow us even to be here tonight. If we had a gathering like this here in Australia, we would all be arrested for a very, very long time. Am I exaggerating with that? It's a very real thing.
Absolutely. I was thinking that earlier. I was like, oh man, if this happened in Melbourne right now, it would be shut down hardcore.
We have something special here in this country, everybody. Let's make sure we don't lose it. God bless you. Thank you for being here.
Man, scary to think, though. Scary to think. There are a lot of very, 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 very smart people out there that don't get anywhere near the amount of attention that they do deserve. Based off just this, Charlie Kirk, seems to know what he's talking about. He seems very intelligent. He seems very well spoken. Apparently better spoken than me. But we can see this happening right now in America. And it's, again, I've said this before, but it's both sides. It's not just one or the other. It's both. More so one side than the other, sure, but both parties are guilty of it. And that's the thing we need to keep in mind. We can fix it. We can get back to the core values of America. But it's the people that have to do it. Because it's not going to happen any other way. Thank you for coming to my corner. I've been the DM. See you next time.